Hey there YouTube, AJ here, and I got one that we've all been waiting for. If you're into cars, motorcycles, hot rods, restoration or building, modifying, whatever, no doubt you've probably heard of the Eastwood SCT surface conditioning tool and probably lost it after one. If you're like me, you probably didn't want to pony up the 200 bucks for one. However, we've all been waiting for Harbor Freight to come out with their clone, and it's finally here, and I'm excited. So, yeah, I know some other people beat me to this video, but there's a reason for that, and we'll get to it in a little bit, why. But I'm still going to do my review of it, do a comparison, and do a quick little test run of it to see, get initial impressions. It's not going to be a full in-depth review, because obviously you can't review a tool like this until you've owned it for quite some time and use it to do a variety of work. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to try to take off some paint off of this grill shell, and I got some leaf springs down here that we're going to try to strip those down, and we're just going to get our initial feel for the tool. Yeah, and do I think it's a good deal compared to the Eastwood tool? Let's start with unboxing it and see what we got. Alright, so the brand name on Harbor Freight's version is Bauer. If you're a frequent Harbor Freight customer like myself, you know the Bauer name, and it's kind of like one of their better brands. So first things first, we have a 240 grit finishing drum. Then we have a 40 grit and 120 grit stripping drum. Looks like we have the hex key tools and bolts for the handles and changing the drums out. There's also some kind of spline keys in here. We'll see what those are for. I'm guessing maybe to hold the drums in place. More cardboard. Right, done with that. We have the D handle and spare brushes, instructions, and then the tool itself. Right away, it does feel substantial. It's got a nice weight to it. Up here is all metal, although, you know, it's probably some kind of die-cast metal maybe. So let's put the handle on it. Alright, right away, yeah, it's got a nice balance and feel to it already. I like it. Seems like it'd be easy to work with, although kind of centered more off to, you know, to the left. It's like made for right-hand users. For me, the angle of my wrist is a little awkward, but not bad. I'm sure I get used to it. Oh, there it is. Alright, so that turns. Over here, there's a button on this side to lock the spindle. Wow, the bolt is really tight in there. Wow, wowzers, that's kind of tight. This might be right-hand thread. Yeah. Alright, so maybe that would have helped in the instructions if I'd read the instructions. So it's not righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. It's righty-loosey, lefty-tighty on this one. So, and you have two slots in the spindle. These little keyways come into play. And for now, I'm just going to mount up the 40 grit stripping drum. I don't see, there's no direction of rotation, so I guess it's omnidirectional here, or bidirectional. Tightening this back down, and that's going to take some getting used to, having the opposite threads on the spindle, but we'll get there. Alright, I think we're ready to go. So, set up relatively easy. The only thing that may throw you off is the threads on this spindle being opposite of normal. You know, for most things that we use in life. So we're going to test it out, but before we do that, let's review some specs and let's see if it makes sense to get this tool over the Eastwood. Before we get into the cost of one versus the other, let's do a little compare and contrast on the specs. So on this side we got the Harbor Freight surface conditioning tool. On the right side, the Eastwood surface conditioning tool. You'll see both units have a 9 amp motor. Eastwood makes a point of noting that their motor is double insulated. I could not find any indication of that in the Harbor Freight documentation. So that could be a potential difference in the two units. This could make the motor better. I don't have information on that. It may not matter at all. This one may be double insulated and they just didn't say it. Both units have a 6-speed control. Both are 1,000 to 3,700 RPM. Now Harbor Freight's documentation says it uses metal gears, full metal gears in the drivetrain, while Eastwood actually calls out that theirs are steel, which leads me to believe that, you know, as cost saving, metal could be a die cast metal, could be a powder pressed gears, some other type of metal other than steel machined gears. So that could be a potential advantage of the Eastwood to the Harbor Freight. Eastwood also advertises theirs as sealed ball bearings. Now, I don't know if Harbor Freight's Bauer tool also has sealed ball bearings. It doesn't say that in the literature or online anywhere. So that could be another potential disadvantage for the Harbor Freight. Some lesser things here. The Harbor Freight has an 8-foot cord while Eastwood only has 7-foot 6-inch cord. Not a huge difference when we're talking a cord, you know. So most of the time you're going to probably be using this with an extension cord anyway, so no big deal. The Harbor Freight tool comes in at 8 pounds while the Eastwood tool comes in at 8.2. That could possibly mean the difference between things like these sealed ball bearings and the steel gears versus metal gears and unknown ball bearings. That little bit of extra weight on the Eastwood tool could be better materials, but I don't have that as a fact. So it's just something to keep in mind. Both tools come with the D handles and tools to install it. The Eastwood tool in their literature actually calls out that they come with spare brushes. When I made this sign, I hadn't opened my box yet, so I didn't know that the Harbor Freight tool comes with spare brushes as well. So we'll just say ditto. Line by line comparison of the features of the tool, everything is pretty similar. The big difference is being the steel gears and the sealed ball bearings here could possibly make a difference in the lifetime of the tool. I don't have any facts to back that up, but that is something you have to keep in mind when you're looking at these tools. Now, let's move on to the major difference between these two tools. And we all know what that major difference is going to be. Price. But it's not as simple on the surface as you think. The Eastwood tool starts out at $199.99. The Harbor Freight tool starts out at $149.99. Basically a difference of 50 bucks. And that's nothing to sneeze at. However, that's just on the surface. We also know that things go on sale. And let's start with the Eastwood tool. Right now is on sale for $189.99, $10 off. But I have seen it as low as $179.99. So let's use that for their best price. The Harbor Freight tool starts out at $149.99. However, we all know Harbor Freight puts out 20% coupons all the time. Not as often as they used to, but they still do it from time to time. So 20% off of this $149 and we get $119.99. So now we're looking at $119 versus $179. So obviously we're talking a bigger difference now. That's already, we're down to $60 difference from their best price. But that's not where it ends. Part of the reason why my video is coming out later than other people that's already reviewed this tool is because I'm cheap. Well, I'm not cheap, I'm frugal. I try to get the best deals I can. And I waited until Memorial Day to buy mine. Because why? Because on Memorial Day, Harbor Freight often puts out a 25% off coupon. So I bought mine on Memorial Day with a 25% off coupon, making my price $112.50. So that gets me another $7.50 off, making my total difference already from here, $112.50 to $179.99, a difference of $67.50. And that's a pretty good discount. However, it doesn't end there. Here's where you got to take a little closer look. The Harbor Freight tool comes with 3 drums. It comes with a 40 grit, a 120 grit, and a 240 grit. The Eastwood tool only comes with the 120 grit drum. So you get these extra 2 drums with the Harbor Freight tool. And if you look at the prices of what Eastwood values their drums at and what Harbor Freight values their drums at, to get those 2 drums added to your $179.99, you got to add in the $53.99 for the 40 grit drum and the $23.99 for the 240 grit drum, a total of another $77.98. So now you're up to 180 and 80, $260 versus my $112.50. That's a pretty big deal. But let's just throw out the drums for a second and let's put the Harbor Freight in terms of Eastwood's prices and only consider the 120 grit drum. So if at these prices it only came with the 120 grit drum, you would back out this dollar amount from these prices and your comparison would then be 105 not on sale, 75 with a 20% off coupon, or 67.50 versus the 179. I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer to give this a try. That said, let's set up here and gear up here, put on my safety gear, and try to strip a couple of things. Okay, we're going to start with this grill shell, then we'll move on to the springs. I'm not going to strip the entire thing. I'm just going to get my initial impressions with it.
I've got the speed on 6.
All right, first impressions. And I'm sure the Eastwood tool is just as good at this, but yeah, man, it really makes quick work out of stripping that paint. I did notice right away when the way I was trying to do this, I was trying to show you the actual removal. So using it sideways was kind of difficult. When I was coming down straight on top of the metal, it was so much easier using the weight of the tool to help strip it. It works so faster than it really showed to you. So that was amazing. So yeah, it strips really good, really quick. The tool is easy to handle. Like I said, a little awkward for my wrist, but I'll get used to that. I'm not going to strip this thing completely right now, but I'm just wanted to use it as an example. So yeah, let's throw one of these nasty springs up on the table, and let's see what it can do with that. So this is the rear spring out of my spring pack from the hot rod. It's pretty rusty, crusty, especially the bottom side. It's really got some road grit and stuff on it. So I think what we're going to do is try that first. Alright, so as you can see, I just basically did a quarter of this spring, you know, 1/2 of the bottom side, in not much time at all. I mean, there's a little spot there and it still needs addressed, but in general, that's 100 years of grime. It's stripped away in no time. And so far, I'm very impressed. The tool, nothing sounds weird about it. It sounds quality, like it runs good. Yeah, I'm looking forward to using this. I think it's going to make my life a lot easier. So let me finish this spring, and then I'll make my closing remarks. So obviously that's not a comprehensive test, but you know, 2 test pieces. Strip the paint off of this grill shell very, very quickly. Rust as well. Yeah, it's not going to get into every crack and groove, and like, obviously you can't use it back here. But yeah, you could. This is definitely going to speed up stripping of big surfaces that you have access to. When I go to strip my tub, you know, it'll be a huge help on that. Or stripping the frame, that type of stuff. It'll be a great help. Looking at the spring, this spring was super crusty and gross. I did not, you know, try to strip it completely down yet. I just wanted to do a test run, but I took off, you know, 90% or more of what I need to take off this spring in no time at all. It is really good for stuff like this. To be fair, it probably took me longer because in reality I should have taken like the really thick crud and used a screwdriver or scraper and like trying to get some of that off first, but I wanted to, you know, just give it an acid test and go for it and basically see what it would do with 100-year-old road grime and stuff. And it came out like a champ. I mean, yeah, I'm gonna have to wire brush in here where I can't get to stuff, and there'll be a few spots I have to touch up yet because I just didn't want to keep going at it. But yeah, it knocked it down really fast, and you can, I mean, for comparison, I don't think this leaf was as bad as that one, but yeah, it did a number on it really fast. I'm really happy. One thing I didn't mention, when you're using it, it does have, this is your style control right here for your speed, 1 to 6, you know, 6 being the fastest. I was stripping everything on 6 with this, making quick work of everything. The drum itself doesn't seem to have hardly any wear on it. I wouldn't expect it to have any wear after just those 2 pieces, but yeah, it doesn't look like it's been hardly used at all. The trigger is easy to use, comfortable. On the left-hand side, you have a lock, so you can pull the trigger in, lock it, and you don't have to hold the trigger the whole time, so that's nice. All in all, Seems well made. Initial use is fantastic. Price is really hard to beat. So if you're looking at this versus the Eastwood SCT, unless you're planning on making a living using this tool, I don't see a reason not to go to the Harbor Freight one at this time. Follow along, subscribe, and you'll see in the future at me actually using it on my hot rod project. And I'll let you know if anything changes, if my view or opinion changes of it, if anything breaks, if I have any problems with it. I will keep you updated. But until then, YouTube, later.